All right. There was a little bit more to that video, but you guys are gonna have to look at my YouTube to watch me eat, or try to eat, a Spam cheese fried egg mayo onion hot hamburger. Yeah, it was gross. In the top right, we have HeRoMaRinE. In the bottom left, it is Clem. Spawn on Data C. So both finalists familiar to the finals. It has been a little while since they were the two combating each other in the finals. A couple of names such as Lambo, or even a Skills a couple times, certainly like a Showtime or a Max Pax. Yeah, all of them have been up in the finals recently. So it's been a little while since specifically a TvT between these two in the finals. I want to say they continue to go back and forth whenever they do match up against each other. Just go ahead and check that while we have factory expands for both players. No, I was actually incorrect. So, really, of the last year, Clem has been way better in TvT against HeRoMaRinE. They play very often. So when I say last year, I mean, you know, over a dozen series. But specifically, the last 3 series, all best of 5s, in the finals of the Open Cup, as well as 1 European events, regional events, were all Clem. 3-1s. Before that, there was a finals where HeRoMaRinE barely won, but then before that, again, a Clem domination 5 series victory. So just overall, yeah, Clem is the better TvTer. So go ahead and take that information and bets, although the betting might already be over by the time I get around to it, so sorry, guys. I was drinking 5 hot 6s in one day. I did not drink all of them. I think I ended up drinking the original that day. And then I maybe saved the King blue one for another day or something, but it was flat, so it wasn't as good. But I definitely didn't drink all of them. So we have a lot of Reapers and Hellions, as we would expect with an opener like this. And then the question is, who's getting more of those? The answer, they're both getting the exact same amounts. Slight difference on the follow-up, though, as Clem goes ahead and grabs some Marines while swapping off add-ons. And HeRoMaRinE just quickly goes to Reactor Tech Lab. It is literally the only difference. Clem is looking to engage. There's a ramp to go up, but HeRoMaRinE didn't actually take the ramp to defend, which seems like a mistake to me. Sometimes it does work better to do what HeRoMaRinE is doing, but also the slight delay on his reaction kind of hurt. And that would be one of the reasons that going away from the ramp might help, is that you at least get to see that you're being engaged upon before you're actually engaged. So it gives you literally a half second more to perhaps respond, but it also kind of clumped his units a little bit more, and, well, at the end of the day, a trade happens here where 1 Hellion survives for HeRoMaRinE, but 5 SCVs go down for him, which is ultimately better for Clem, although HeRoMaRinE had already gained an SCV lead by looks of things, because Clem's only ahead though, too. I'm not exactly sure how that happened, actually, because they were, up until the add-ons of the 1-1-1, doing the exact same build. So I must have missed a brief pause in SCV production for Clem, for one reason or another. And the builds have differed greatly at this point, with a medevac coming out for Clem, and the Raven here for HeRoMaRinE. But yeah, the SCVs, thought there would be more of an advantage there for the Red Terran. There is not. All right then. Kind of getting away with unloading there. And he even bothers to micro that Marine out of the lock-on. Clem cares about every unit in his arsenal. Grabs a couple of SCVs as the mass repair saves the Cyclone, which is ever so important to deflect harassment like this. But overall, HeRoMaRinE is kind of caught sleeping multiple times. Right now, the first 5 minutes of game number 1, what's really differing the two Terrans is speed. Now, of course, I'm not going to call HeRoMaRinE a boomer. He's old and he's slow and he can't keep up, because that's not necessarily the issue. Although I do think Clem, on average, is faster. That's not really the issue. It's more that the aggressor is getting the jump, which isn't exactly surprising. So, Clem the aggressor. Might be a little more of a high-risk, high-reward situation. He could easily mess up the micro and run right into the Cyclone, for instance, with that medevac. But he definitely is the one more likely to control the situation. So a little bit of back and forth, both of them doing some auto-turret harassment at this point, so Clem continues to hold on to just a single, maybe 2 worker lead, not even. Third CC was faster, I believe, for HeRoMaRinE. Yes, indeed, already in orbital. And Clem is going to lose at a CV lead. Does he have a lead anywhere else? No. I'm still a bit bewildered by this, because typically, with the way they both are going, no big interruptions, big change-ups of, like, focusing on this or that. There's not really a lot of SCV interruption. You know, literally, you build the orbital, that's an SCV interruption, and you land the orbital, that's an SCV interruption, so this is an interruption. But otherwise, Clem has killed 10 SCVs compared to just the 4 of HeRoMaRinE, and he's behind 2 workers. So obviously, he had to have skipped purposefully or accidentally SCVs. If it was purposeful, it probably lasted, you know, a solid number of seconds. If it was accidental, we're talking about maybe like half a second every round. So Clem might be a little bit faster getting the jump on HeRoMaRinE's units, but HeRoMaRinE might actually be playing just that little bit extra, more mechanically perfect. Very interesting. I feel like I'm usually savvy enough in this matchup with these races to tell you why SCV counts are different, but they were so similar build-order-wise, and the tree branch chosen from Clem doesn't usually it's not accompanied by an SCV gap. So I don't... Well, moving on. At the end of the day, HeRoMaRinE has a slight economic lead, very slight, and Clem has a slight army supply lead, but he is behind a little bit in the stim, thus the combat shields, a little ahead on the barracks. I mean, we're talking about a very, very close TvT. Very close. Okay, Tank, what you doing? I'm not even sure why a factory would be rallied over there at all. It's not like an observer. Anyhow. Clem is going to expedite his push. He's got triple Raven compared to the 2 Ravens of HeRoMaRinE. So more bursty engagements with all the pickups happening. All the pickups happening now, it just clearly is a doom drop. If it was only the 2 tanks picked up, and tanks picked up, could be a doom drop, or could be just trying to, again, like, expedite to the other side of the map, right, as fast as possible, with tanks being the slowest units, and slowest to position themselves, I guess, more specifically. But it is a drop. Very interesting here. 3 Marines with the brush couldn't actually tell that there was a, I think, otherwise noticeable lack of units if the brush vision didn't impact that. But I think it did. So there's absolutely no warning to HeRoMaRinE that a big old drop is heading into the main base. He tries to react as fast as possible with his own drop, but at far less units, so didn't really work out. Maybe not far less units, but definitely less units. Now coming in with a Raven tank, still has his tanks in position, so he knew this was going to be double-pronged, abso-freaking-lutely, and he tried his best to handle it with that knowledge. But at the end of the day, he lost 22 SCVs. The gamble worked out for Clem. And now HeRoMaRinE is going to have to start the long, slow process of making a comeback. What could help is dominating this engagement, going for an immediate counter, but that auto turret is MV-freaking-P. Oh my god, that auto turret, never before displaying how cruel the high threat level of it could be in that manner. The SCVs literally all try to surround a freaking auto turret on the high ground. Wow. I always talk about how it has the highest threat in the game, or one of the highest threats in the game anyways. But it usually impacts like a handful of Marines that are kind of in its range. And they get killed quickly, right? Because it's usually Marines or tanks focus firing on it, so you get to see it for like half a second, and then boom, it's gone. But SCVs trying to kill it and all being focused on it was one of the worst SCV pulls that you could ever do. And that is probably going to be it then. If he had SCV pulled perhaps more correctly, his counterattack would have been a little more dangerous, because that's what I was getting at. If he pulls the SCVs and the auto turret doesn't affect the engagement like that, and they buffer so that 30 SCVs die, but almost all of the army survives, the counterattack's a little bit sketch. but that didn't really happen. Not to mention there was just 3 other auto turrets on top of the tanks that also would have made it so that I don't think HeRoMaRinE could have done an old switcheroo. Lose all his SCVs but gain the army advantage. The auto turrets were too impactful as a whole. Game number 2 on its way already. On inside and out. In the bottom left, down a game, he is Mal's HeRoMaRinE. In the top right, our team Liquid and Clem. It is Clem. The Mlemliest of Clemliest. Both of these players will be in Atlanta this upcoming week. Generally, as far as I understand it, player travel is actually taken care of rather swiftly, especially in comparison to talent. I don't know what it is about talent, aside from like different departments. Which I have my suspicions that there's at least one very bad employee for ESL, but I don't know. Seems to be that players have the downside of not knowing if they're going to be going to somewhere until the very last second. Or not quite the very last second, but you know what I mean. Like, they have to qualify for it, which is often placed rather close to the actual event itself. So these guys wouldn't know for a fact that they would be going to Atlanta until they were in the top 4 of DreamHack Europe Regionals. But, both players probably would have been flown out. Are being flown out? Did both of them make top 4? Actually, I've already forgotten. I'll brush up on it, don't worry. Anywho. But it seems like when they do know, they get accommodated travel-wise pretty quickly. So, certainly different departments, but wish ours is as fast. Considering that, especially many of us actually were told this time ahead of time, far in advance, if we were going to do Atlanta. A couple people were last-second hires, but I have known for like 6 months, for instance. But whatever. Companies, am I right, guys? So yeah, both of these players going to be in Atlanta. As far as I know, there's no really big dropouts like there were for Valencia when, you know, Cyril didn't show up. But I could be wrong. Actually, I haven't checked out the list recently. The players will be in Atlanta. Casters will not. But if you are going to Atlanta, definitely say hi to Cats and Pig. Both of the animal casters are going to be in Atlanta just for coincidental reasons, I suppose. And then make sure to get everything signed by the players. I do think American tournaments are usually very fun. There's definitely an energy there that can be missing in some other events. Leipzig. Sorry, German. But they're usually pretty cool. I just kind of hope that the energy is there. It's like it's like the biggest thing for me when it comes to feeling alive, not dead game. It's not really the viewership. It's how much it's being talked about, how passionate the fans look, and that type of thing. So when Valencia kept showing the freaking empty crowd because it was in between games, so the crowd was there. It really was. Trust, like, I'm not lying for the sake of lying. All right. The crowd was there for the games, I swear to God. But then they would leave because it's a convention center, and there's other stuff to do while there's a break screen on. And they'd show all the empty seats, and then that is seriously an impactful perception problem. I hope they don't do that in Atlanta. Just covering a very basic opener. TvT doing TvT things. Clem has gone up to an additional Reaper compared to his opponents and did get aggressive first and foremost last game. It netted him victory, technically. He was ahead by 2 SCVs. So I'm a little surprised he didn't do it again. But he did notably stop at 1 Hellion. Didn't go on a second one, so kind of an interesting change-up. Usually with 3 Rippers, you do get 2 Hellions. But in this case, try to go for a little more of a backstab maneuver, where his factory production was still on par with the other guy, who also went for only 1 Hellion. 50 gas, I think, is not as impactful. Well, it is. It's absolutely impactful to a Terran's opening build order. Once they're past thirds, command centers, gas is when, you know, that's a little meh. But then we go into Ravens eventually anyways, and gas is once again being very important. But what I'm trying to say is that the barracks production is what was kind of changed there. So 1 Reaper for a bit more of a backstab opportunity, but you don't get the swap off of the add-on as quick. So it's really the biggest difference between the 2 openers. Clem is going into Vikings, but then also into faster stim. And they have the same number of Vikings? Clem actually has more. Oh, he didn't get in the Raven, that's why. I was like, there's something had to be different. Something had to be real different. What's going on here? And the difference, 1 Raven versus 2. So Clem changing it up completely from his triple Raven action in the last game. So if Clem decides to go for another big pickup, it's going to be hard to do when he's producing nothing but Vikings. And that is the case so far. It's not abnormal for a Terran player to be going for Vikings up to even 6 right off the bat. What is more abnormal is if they continued after 6 and went to 8, 10, 12, 14. No medevacs whatsoever. Especially since they're playing bio. So if they go into more than that, obviously the likelihood of drops less. But the ability to win the air war increases, right? If you win the air war in one of these long, slow, drawn-out battles, then you might just win the TvT. If HeRoMaRinE goes for medevacs, literally just waiting since his last round of Vikings just popped, then he'll have a little bit more mobility on his side. And we are literally just waiting for that HeRoMaRinE just shy of minerals required to do so, as we have some Reaper on Reaper action that is ultimately unnecessary to talk about. Being Atlanta, first StarCraft 2 event I've ever attended. Esport event I've ever attended. That's awesome. I hope it's really exciting. So since it is a very passive TvT, not even trying to do one of the earlier Viking Raven tank pushouts that you absolutely can do, we're gonna get into 4th command center. And HeRoMaRinE was the first to bet on that, anticipate that, whatever. So his 4th CC is faster, just not in location. And despite trading off Vikings earlier, was later to the production of medevacs, so we do still have that slight difference. But Clem actually does have the faster 2 medevacs. It is trying to go for a drop right into the hands of HeRoMaRinE's Vikings. HeRoMaRinE just getting, frankly, lucky about that. All right, Clem kind of sizing things up and evaluating. I could probably take that on. If HeRoMaRinE hadn't paid attention and thrown down some auto turrets, he actually might have lost even another Raven or maybe even his tank. A couple of Vikings, something along those lines. Because Clem wasn't exactly wrong, but auto turrets are huge in these battles. I mean, they're basically huge across all of TvT, right? So paying attention at the last second salvages maybe a little bit of that engagement. It's such a small thing, though, since we're talking about 4 base versus 4, a 2 supply difference. I mean, it's got to be something way bigger than that to actually be worth Really disgusting. It's both of them slap down their 4th command centers, with, again, it being such a passive TvT. We got to be going into those starports. I'd be really surprised if Clem, despite him being known as the more, you know, the faster, more action-y, I suppose, Terran, overall anyways, not that HeRoMaRiNE's not, I'd be, you know, it's kind of wrong. It's almost incorrect to go into more barracks as opposed to starport. So it's kind of more of a, it is a decision. It's not wrong. I don't want to say that, and then someone's going to clip it and be like, well, one time ZombieGrub said it was wrong. Like, it is a decision. You can either go into a mass amount of Marines on the ground, or you can go into the yield TvT Viking Raven War. But one is far more common. The other one is a little more desperate, or perhaps only utilized when you think you have that advantage to kind of punch it and win. Because I think it used to be also more common, right? Like, the 2 extra starports being added on, I think was like very, very late game TvT years ago. But with Maru proving just how much of a comeback you can mount if you focus on tank and Viking production, the amount of times we've seen someone opt for 3 extra barracks and just, you know, punch after punch after punch, it feels like it's very limited how much we've seen that work. Although we have seen it. Coming to mind, actually, is someone like Bunny. Probably still does it. Anyhow. Double drop to the right side is looking to just dart into the 3rd base prior to Clem noticing and being in position. Considering there's a supply depot, Marines, sensor tower, you know, Clem would really have to be already moving across the map to be out of position. Which is not the case. So we have TvT, ladies and gentlemen. It's TvT, guys. What do you want to talk about? How about them Knicks? Yeah? Start talking about the slight differences between the 2, but it's completely worthless. They are so similar, even in their upgrade timings. It's all going to come down to who's the better engager when it comes to late game TvT. I don't like that decision to have casters off site. I get it, I understand it, but I don't like it. Yeah, me too. There's definitely going to be some big change-ups. Hopefully. Next year. If it happens. I don't know anything. Stop talking. But anyways, focusing on the TvT, 5th base does go down, but HeRoMaRiNE isn't going to really cry about that for too long. What he might cry about is not having more tanks sieged up. This would have been a no-brainer defense if all these tanks were actually sieged up, but they were just responding. But yeah, the loss of 5th command center in a game like this is actually not all that important, to be honest. It's more like it could be one thing that leads to another. You don't get the 5th base up the first time, and then you never get it up just because they keep on attacking into you, and then that's an issue. But assuming that doesn't happen, that, you know, the army's over here and the 5th base is over there, 400 minerals down the drain is actually not so bad. It's going to be more of a gas type of game. Mass Viking Raven tank. And they're both maxed out and trying to build a bank anyways. But it is inside and out, so as we approach the later game, the almost guaranteed later game, so you just don't assume anyone's going to lose or throw the game at this point, basically. It's too delicate for that. Both of them are very much in the know that they have to play this out carefully, although finding all these tanks out in their lonesome would be a potentially game-ending move. Will it actually turn out to be one? I mean, many of them did not die. So a couple died, a couple got interference matrix, but eventually the line in the sand was in fact drawn. So it's like, oh, it was almost exciting. Oh man. It's what's talking about? Oh, it's inside and out. So as I was saying, if we're just gonna go ahead and assume that we're gonna go into at least 16 or 17 minutes, it's a small map base-wise. So soon enough, they're gonna choose one spot to really tug of war over. Maybe it is the middle, but oftentimes it's around an actual base, and then they're gonna try and take that base. And whoever manages to dig away better is gonna win, right? So perhaps not a big burst battle, but rather a slow chipping away, although Clem is going for a bit of a burst. Sieges all of his tanks, then actually unsieges many of them as he realized kind of midway that the engagement was going to go really well for him. The noticeable lack of marine buffer there from HeRoMaRiNE or any type of buffer, right? It could have been Marines, could have been landed Vikings. Actually, it was a huge issue. His tank count was fine, but it was kind of all over the place. It was being interference matrix. It was being jumped upon without protection. And Clem was very quick in realizing that was going to work out for him really, really well. So he wanted to pounce, given the opportunity. Speaking of pouncing, HeRoMaRinE notices that these tanks are also a little bit unguarded, so he jumps on top, but with very few number of Marines, was not able to take out all of them. However, a couple more tank shots from HeRoMaRinE ends up at least evening out the tank counts a little bit more. I think prior to that, it was more like a 5 versus 8. Now it's 3 versus 5. And HeRoMaRinE does look like he might have just lost too important of a battle. And this might be a push to win. It actually is. GG. Damn. GG did not get to 16 minutes. Ended at 15. HeRoMaRinE thought he had momentum, and certainly, arguably, he did. Just kind of left his tanks a bit underdefended. Had lost the Viking War pretty substantially at some point, so they couldn't even emergency protect the tanks. Yeah. HeRoMaRinE taking a second. He's on his last life. Guess where the cat's been this entire time, guys? Right where I told him to get away from earlier. You know? Got his cat butt. Right where I'd be using my mouse. Kitty butt. Kitty butt. The whoop. Even I say he doesn't have a tail sometimes because it's just easier. But there is a little bit of a tail that goes... Whoop. Wait, whoop. Whoop. He's purposefully not doing it. He knows I want it. Raise your tail. Do it. Do it. Do the thing. Do the thing. Okay. HeRoMaRinE is now ready to go. I believe it was HeRoMaRinE anyways, because I saw Clem say ready. Oh, by the way, thank you 47 is for the 1,000 bits happening during the break. Sorry about that. Yes, thank you very much. 1,000 bits support for our game's #1 casta. I appreciate that. And Panzer 80 for 11 months if I did miss it. We are into maybe the final game of the best of 5. In the top right, down 2, he is HeRoMaRinE. Bottom left, it is Liquid Clem. And yeah, HeRoMaRinE was without supply, truly. Kind of, it was one of those situations where no matter what the supply was, it would have been better. Tanks alone were in good numbers. Alone don't make a full TvT. So they needed Vikings to help them out. They needed Ravens to auto-turret in front of them. They needed Marines to tank all the shots. They needed more than that. But Clem realized pretty quickly, pretty damn quickly, once he dominated the skies, kind of at like the beginning of the battle, wasn't it? He was like, oh, okay, I won that. And then got in there in Interference Matrix and saw kind of the depth of tanks. He just immediately unsieged. He sieged anticipating one type of battle, a closer type of battle, and then he unsieged when he realized he was winning it hardcore. And perhaps if we added 20 seconds to the distance between that fight and HeRoMaRiNE's third or fourth or whatever, maybe HeRoMaRiNE's still in the game, give it the old college try. But with it already hitting his third before he could really muster up the defenses, yeah, you tap out at that point. He's not fat. I mean, he is overweight. But he's just got a pooch. Lots of male cats have, you know, a little pouch. It's not actually a pouch. It's but legitimately, I always tell this to my dad always makes fun of the cats that when they run, they have that little jiggle on their belly. And I'm like, well, okay, part of it's because they're overweight. But the cats have a little protective layer of fat for when they're clawing each other's guts out. So next time someone says you have some belly fat, just be like, it's helpful for when I'm attacked. First Reaper is heading across the map with an SCV, copying it. All it really takes for defense here is paying attention to your own Reaper. Oh my god, the grenade though almost changed that. Clem almost perfectly grenaded the Reaper into a winnable 1v1 position. I think the Marine would have been enough to stop it because the Reaper was injured in the process, but that's how it snowballs. That's how it snowballs, man. Hope they're not feeling this kind of lag spike there. Clem doing what Clem does best, actually, and getting a lot of micro done. Now, this second Reaper is actually extremely dangerous. This is if that one Reaper had died, I think this is GG. Well, the thing is, if the Reaper had died, HeRoMaRiNE might not have built a reactor knowing that he needed production, but that's the big problem. Oh, he gets his round. I said him. Is that it doesn't seem like a lot because it's not. But when you're not producing anything and the things you produce die, it doesn't take a lot to start doing a lot of damage. So that was the main concern there, is that it would have snowballed enough while HeRoMaRiNE was... It's not really being greedy, that's kind of a weird way of putting it, but was continuing on with his build, you know? Now, the Hellion's supposed to safeguard you for the most part, but again, you could say it's like greedy what he's doing, but he's also just trying to... Oh my god, the Reaper micro versus the Hellion micro, oh my god. You could say it's greedy. To go for these add-ons as opposed to making more army, I guess at the end of the day, that is greedy. He's trying to get ahead in a certain way. It does not involve winning the army fight. So, you know, is he going to get punished or not? It's been very, very close to being punished. But it's usually not something that we would call greedy because it's usually not that big of a deal. Usually people don't snowball in the situation. But it got dangerously close to it. Now Clem is looking to do more damage with a medevac drop. Hellions into the main base. One Reaper to pop any defensive units out of the way. I'm sure is how this is gonna go. Well, or just engage. The number of Marines here is a bit lackluster, but the concave is pretty good. They focus fire down the weak Hellion, leaving 2 left over. And those 2 are also very, very weak. So now Clem, being fancy, he's being Clem. He's gotten already probably into HeRoMaRiNE's head a little bit. He has literally gotten a lead here by 1 SCV. That's not as important as the fact that he is taking this situation to go into a 3rd CC on location because he can. Because he has not just done damage to his opponents, he has done damage to his opponent's army count, so there's less to counterattack with. He's scouted his opponent, at least a little bit anyways, so he knows where the army was last seen, how far away is it from actually trying to attack, what was produced, and what is actually threatening to me. So in that case, you know, nothing. A Cyclone wouldn't have been enough by its lonesome. A tank is a little scary, but obviously it's going to come out much later because you had to build the Hellion, the Tech Lab, the Cyclone, and then the tank. So Clem pretty much knows this is viable. even though it looks like a gamble. He knows that it is viable. Now, if a Cyclone had come across the map and gotten a lock on when the command center was still building, that would have been a little awkward, but it wasn't the case. So Clem is now getting leaps and bounds ahead. That third command center. Insanely fast, but I love HeRoMaRiNE's changeup. I'm not sure he really planned on doing this from the get-go. I would have had to have seen the timing of his fourth, which I just wasn't paying attention to his fourth gas. Sorry. But he is going into double starport. So this is, you know, more mid-game oriented and could absolutely work against Clem. The sooner that Clem identifies this, the better his chances are. Knowledge is power. But the way that he engages is really one of the issues here. So if he tries to, for instance, match the air game without any support whatsoever, he's going to lose it. He's just not producing as many air units. But if he were to try and maybe take some of the Cyclone lock-ons seriously and be like, okay, I need to lock onto a Viking while engaging, that could change things up. If he's actually out on the map buying more time, exactly like he is, that could change things up. If he's just like laying at home doing nothing and this suddenly arrives, he's probably dead. If he can identify this, pull SCVs, and then take care of it, nip it in the bud, that would be fantastic, but unlikely. And it looked like he was kind of contemplating it and realized it wasn't going to work. After already losing 2 of his tanks, last tank does go down. Third C is going to have to be lifted. But HeRoMaRiNE is losing all of his SCVs on the other side of the map. This wasn't totally all in, but now it might be. 16 SCVs go down for HeRoMaRiNE, only 8 for Clem, as Clem's third command center also looks to live. And HeRoMaRiNE acknowledges that he's not going to get as much as necessary to deal with this, to actually win the game based off army supply alone. GG, 3-0. Clem. So hot right now. It's an even better performance than last time we met in the finals. Well played, well played. What happened to the cat's tail? Nothing. He's a Japanese bobtail. That's how his tail's supposed to look. It's a nubbin. Yeah, he's got a nub. I also like to leave you folks with this graceful cat. I don't know if you can quite see him. Look at that cat. Look how he's sitting. Ziggy. What are you sitting like? You crazy kitten. Alright. So that's it for the Open Cup. Thanks for watching, guys. Thanks for all the resubs.